Welcome to the Bible Answer Man broadcast with Christian Research Institute President hank-hanegraaff. Our mission at CRI is not only to equip you with orthodox Christian doctrine, apologetic accuracy, and discernment, but to help you become a faithful apprentice of Jesus Christ because life and truth matter. If you'd like to ask Hank a question, please call in now at 888-ASK-HANK. That's 888-275-4265. For more information about CRI and the Bible Answer Man broadcast, go to our website at equip.org. And now, here's hank-hanegraaff.
Thank you very much, Randy. As always, great to be in studio. The number to dial to get your questions answered live on air today, 888-ASK-HANK. Numerically, 888-275-4265. And I do want to go to the calls in just a few moments. However, as you start calling in, I want to ask you a question. Who do you think said this? The first person who, having fenced off a plot of ground, took it into his head to say, "This is mine," and found people simple enough to believe him. That first person was the true founder of civil society. What crimes, wars, murders, and miseries and horrors would the human race have been spared by someone who, uprooting the stakes or filling in the ditch, had shouted to his fellow man, "Beware of listening to this impostor. You are lost if you forget that the fruits belong to all and the earth to no one." Well, that was actually Jean Rousseau. He was the first true socialist. In fact, he sowed the seeds for the French Revolution. In his view, secure property rights were to be abolished at all cost. He was the father of the very communist thought expressed by the woman who was part of the Workers' World Party. Remember her? She put a noose around the neck of a Confederate soldier. The statue toppled. Spitting and stomping ensued. And I did a little research, and I talked about her on the show a number of weeks ago. She, again, is a member of the Workers' World Party. She's a Marxist-Leninist. She's a supporter of the North Korean totalitarian regime. She's anti-Christian, pro-Muslim. Perhaps better said, pro-Islam. And the reason I bring this up at the beginning of the broadcast today is that we are now in a condition in the U.S. that is precarious. Lee Kuan Yew was right when he said all civilization is essentially fragile. He knew what he was talking about. He saw what happened to Cambodia. And by the way, he had patterned, as the father of Singapore, the structure of Singapore after Cambodia, because at the time Cambodia was a first world country. Today it's a third world country at best, decimated by Pol Pot and then ensuing violence and anarchy. And today you can walk the streets as I did last year and see the garbage in the streets and the poor huddled in places that once were used as places of worship. And I had to think about this today as I was watching some of what is going on with Antifa. I was reading USA Today, and the narrative there was that Antifa is an organization that stood against Hitler in Germany, Mussolini in Italy, And now they stand, well, courageously, I suppose, against neo-Nazis and racism. Well, sounds pretty good. They're against the Nazis, they're against Mussolini, they're against racism, and they're certainly against neo-Nazis, white supremacists. So far, so good. But then you do a little research, and you start to explore what they really want, what they desire to happen in America. And so I watched one of their protests as the roiling black-masked masses shouted, "No Trump, no wall, no USA at all," over and over again. No Trump, no wall, no USA at all. This happened in Berkeley. And I couldn't help, as I was watching them mouth that mantra, as clever as it is, I couldn't help but think of Rousseau. And that's why I started the broadcast as I did, with a quote from Rousseau. Domestically, Antifa are terrorists and tactics. They burn, they beat, they break things, and they are perversely intolerant of anyone who encloaks their Leninist, Marxist propaganda. And of course, we saw that in full view with James Hodgkinson. Remember James? Well, he shot Representative Steve Khaleesi and four others in Alexandria after he had drunk deeply at the well of Antifa. What we have here is the media creating a false choice, such that disowning Antifa is tantamount to being a neo-Nazi or a white supremacist. It's high time that we denounced both with equal vigor, because they are creating anarchy in a country that can, as yet, be a great force for good and for the gospel. And I'm heartened to see that now even the editorial board of the Washington Post appropriately suggests that Antifa would be more appropriately designated PROFA. In other words, they're not anti-fascism, they're pro-fascism. Good for the editorial board of the Washington Post. Unexpected, but great. What you have here is an organization that is personifying the rise of the violent left. It is happening with vast rapidity. So how do you counter it? Only a gospel of grace can counter the violence taking place in America today. And we can be heartened to see that in the midst of a horrific tragedy in Houston, that grace is evident. My son David was showing me a video, a short video, as an interview of a man with his son. They had lost everything. They didn't even know where they were going. And yet the grace and peace that that man manifested in the midst of the storm pointed inevitably to the fact that he had a Father in heaven who would put all things to right. Maybe not now, but in eternity, all things will be put to right. And in the meantime, if one is truly committed to Christ, we are also committed to the truth that all things work together for good to those who love the Lord and are the called according to his purposes. So even in tragedy, maybe especially in tragedy, we can still see the finger of God. And for me, that finger of God was manifest in that black and white had morphed into human. It wasn't about the color of your eyes or the amount of pigmentation in your skin. It was about one human being helping another human being in the midst of tragedy. And that ultimately is the solution, because quite frankly, and this has been pointed out to me over and over again, today what we are doing is we are trying to benefit from the tragedy. I don't mean to point out CNN, but it was one of the clips that I saw. A CNN reporter pushing a microphone into the face of a wet and cold and disheartened individual who had faced extreme tragedy and trying to get a soundbite. And that person going berserk. Can't you see that I don't need to give you a soundbite or something sensational for the evening news? I need my child to be warmed and fed. Well, she didn't say it quite that nicely. But I think we get the point. We are oftentimes trying to capitalize on tragedy in order to promote an agenda, whatever that agenda might be, instead of doing what we are called to do as Christians, using this occasion as an opportunity to be selfless. And we can do that by praying. We can do that in a lot of practical manners as well. People are coming to Houston from all over the country with boats and with gear and with clothing. And at the end of the day, the Lord sees all of that. And the Lord cares about all of that. And when we stand before him, we will be asked, what did we do? Did we give the piece of bread, the cup of water, and then not only feed a person physically, but also feed a person spiritually? A lot of people hear that and they say, well, that sounds like a works-oriented theology. Well, read Ephesians 2, 8, 9, and 10. A true faith is never without the attendant works. James makes that clear. And while we are saved on account of Jesus Christ through faith, and by God's grace, ultimately that true faith is manifested not by antinomianism, but rather by working while we are here to do what Christ did while he was here, because we are now his hands and his feet. And we don't need to look at what someone else is doing or critique that one way or the other. This is a time for every one of us as Christians to be introspective, because it is the ultimate opportunity to make a difference while there is yet time. I want to mention Jill, who wrote to me, I'm so glad I found your page. Now I can keep an update on how you're doing. I never gave you a hug bye, but know I'm always praying for you, always. And then she says, I used to work at Famous Toastery, in case you weren't sure who this was. So this is a great example of a place that I kind of hang out at. some mornings and have breakfast and read, and found a friend there, many friends there actually, that are now praying for me as I go through my cancer treatments, and grateful for that. Remember, this is a broadcast designated to preparing people to always be ready to give an answer, a reason for the hope that lies within them, with gentleness and with respect. We do what we do because life and truth matters, and we ask you to stand with us prayerfully in the battle for life and truth, because it really does matter. And in doing that, you're making a difference not only for time, but also for eternity. Do also remember the resources available for a couple days yet for those who support the ministry prayerfully and financially. Check them out on the web at equip.org. We'll be right back.
This is a desperate time for America. American culture is changing faster than ever before, and George Barna understands this. His new book, America at the Crossroads, shows the explosive trends that are shaping America, along with how, why, and what you should do to shape our future from a Christian perspective. We stand at a hinge in history, and the clock is ticking. You may delay, but time will not. To receive your copy of America at the Crossroads, Explosive Trends Shaping America's Future and What You Can Do About It, as our appreciation for your financial partnership, simply call 888-7000-CRI and make a gift to support the Christian Research Institute's many outreaches. 888-7000-CRI or visit equip.org. We'll be back in just a moment with more from hank-hanegraaff. Has God spoken? Are the words of Scripture merely human in origin, or are they in fact the very words of God Himself? 3 years in the making and based on 2 decades of research and reflection, hank-hanegraaff's monumental book, Has God Spoken?, answers what is surely the most important question facing our world. In Has God Spoken? Memorable Proofs of the Bible's Divine Inspiration, Hank counters the contentions of the Bible attackers and clearly shows that belief in the Holy Scriptures is not a guess or wishful thinking. It is the only logical conclusion after an honest examination of overwhelming evidence. Order Has God Spoken from the Christian Research Institute by calling 888-7000-CRI or go online to equip.org. Equip.org. America is at a crossroads. Action is needed, but not just any action. We don't need Christians merely attempting to do their best. We need soberly informed Christians doing what is genuinely strategic. The future doesn't just happen. It is created by people committed to envisioning and facilitating specific outcomes in society. The key is not simply to know what is coming, but to determine how to respond most intelligently and strategically to emerging circumstances. And that's why hank-hanegraaff and the Christian Research Institute are offering George Barna's strategic book, America at the Crossroads, in appreciation for your financial partnership. Simply call 888-7000-CRI and make a gift to support CRI's life-changing outreaches. 888-7000-CRI or visit equip.org. Are you the product of millions of years of unguided, purposeless, natural processes? Or are you created in the image of a loving God? Faced with the overwhelming scorn of evolutionary proselytizers, it can be hard to articulate the truth about God's creative work. And even among faithful Christians, many misconceptions linger. The Creation Answer book by hank-hanegraaff puts answers to the most hotly debated origins questions right at your fingertips, giving you clarity and understanding. Learn to articulate the truth about our origins clearly and compassionately when you request your copy of the Creation Answer book, or listen to Hank's insightful answers with the unabridged audiobook version on CD. Receive your copy of the Creation Answer book or the audiobook on CD from the Christian Research Institute when you call 888-7000-CRI or go online to equip.org. live in a tumultuous time. Upheavals and reversals in culture, popular opinion, morality, race relations, socioeconomic status, and so much more have entire generations feeling off balance or out of touch. How do we keep pace with the breathtaking rate of change in our society when we can hardly find time to keep up with our own racing news feeds? And in the face of such enormous cultural forces, is there anything we can do? In the book, America at the Crossroads, best-selling author and cultural analyst George Barna turns his researcher's eye to the most significant trends, compiling and distilling salient information for busy readers who want to shape culture rather than allow it to shape them. To receive your copy of America at the Crossroads, simply call 888-7000-CRI and make a gift to support the Christian Research Institute's life-changing outreaches. 888-7000-CRI or visit equip.org. Let's return to your host, hank-hanegraaff.
Thank you much, Randy. The number to dial, 888-ASK-HANK, numerically 888-275-4265. Our contact information on the web, equip.org, via the mailbox 8500, Charlotte, North Carolina, zip code 28271. And as always, our resource consultant standing by, 888-7000 and the letters CRI. If you have not as yet subscribed to the Christian Research Journal, a brand new edition of the journal, hot off the press, ready for you to subscribe to, check it out at equip.org. One of the articles that I was intrigued by was a practical hermeneutics article. Hermeneutics, again, is the art and science of biblical interpretation. And in this article, Michael Sherrard does a fantastic job of pointing out how fallacious the argument is that Scripture neither condemns nor prohibits abortion. Because there's a new apologetic in the air today. And that apologetic is forwarded by people like Dr. Stephen Morris, who is writing for the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and says it would surprise many in the anti-abortion flock to learn that abortion is nowhere mentioned in the Bible. And thus, his advice, don't tyrannize others based on theological guesswork. So you have today pro-life advocates who can no longer claim that the fetus isn't human. Now, why is that? It is because the science of embryology has clearly settled that matter once and for all. So we know in an age of scientific enlightenment that from the earliest stages of development, an embryo is a distinct, living, and whole person. What they do claim is that though human, and this is the new apologetic, though human, the unborn do not possess full moral worth. Why? Because they're not persons. So in a New York Times interview, abortion doctor and professing Christian Willie Parker says, if I thought I was killing a person, I wouldn't do abortions. A fetus is not a person. It's a human entity or a human being. So you make a distinction between a human entity and a person. And he feels perfectly content in continuing on with abortions because of that distinction. That's the new apologetic. And, of course, it's necessary with sonograms because now we can see. And so you had to come up with another argument. So we know as Christians that that argument is false. We've understood Scripture to teach that all humans are valuable by virtue of their nature. Why we are created in the imago Dei. We're created in the image and likeness of God. And yet, Dr. Parker, it's hard to imagine. He says the procedure room in an abortion clinic is as sacred as any other space to me, because that's where I am privileged to honor your choice. In other words, choice is sacred, and that is what makes us special. And therefore, in this line of reasoning, it is immoral to deny one's right to choose. So we live in an epoch of time in which the belief that the Bible supports abortion is growing. It's being embraced in Christian circles. We're taking on all the trappings of the culture. And it's partly, or as Michael Sherrard points out, mainly because many share the wrongful pro-choice assumption that our value comes from our function, not from our being. Now, all of this is very practical, and it's the practical hermeneutics section in the Christian Research Journal. Many other great articles in this journal. I mean, I can flip through it and tell you why to read it. One of the articles that I also was very, very touched by was the Effective Evangelism section article, That Nuns May Perish. I actually read the title wrong. That nuns may not perish. And in this article, we have the absolutely terrifying statistic that less than 0.5% of 18 to 23-year-olds hold to the Christian view of the world. Less than 0.5% of 18 to 23-year-olds hold to a Christian view of the world. More than 80% of young adults are spiritually disengaged by the age of 29. In Europe and America, the numbers of the faithful are declining as younger nuns replace, and nuns is not N-U-N-S, but N-O-N-E-S. As younger nuns replace their more religiously affiliated elders. And so what are we to do in this milieu? Well, we have a great opportunity, a mission field on our own doorstep, and we need to learn to use the Socratic Method. There are a couple of articles in the journal that really underscore that. The most effective way to initiate the process is to ask disarming questions and listen carefully to the answers. Again, that's known as the Socratic Method. So questions, do you ever wonder how it all began? Do you believe in justice and human rights? Are you tolerant of the views of others? What was the message you took from that movie? What do you think happens to us when we die? I mean, asking these kinds of questions allows people the opportunity to start thinking about those things that really matter. So again, the article, very, very helpful, the Effective Evangelism section, but great articles throughout the Christian Research Journal. It is available for those who subscribe. You can subscribe online at equip.org, or again, simply write me at Box 8500, Charlotte, North Carolina, zip code 28271. Or as mentioned, talk to one of our resource consultants, 888-7000, and the letters CRI. Also want to alert you to the fact that we're almost out of days in this month, and starting in September, Muslim, what you need to know about the world's fastest growing religion. And listeners of the Bible Answer Man broadcast will be able to get in on that book about a month before everybody else. And you can therefore order your copy for your gift to the ministry and receive an autographed copy. And look on the web. There are all kinds of different possibilities. The book will also be available in audiobook. Again, check it out on the web at equip.org. I want to take a Facebook question from Desiree, who has what she calls a theological question. If you're truly born again, but in your walk struggle with an old sin and backslide while struggling and longing to be free, will God still forgive you as you are trying to repent? And Desiree, the answer is absolutely yes. God will forgive you. And I think the operative word, as I always explain it to people, is simply this, that there always has to be a willingness to change. A willingness to have a change of heart, a change of mind, a U-turn on the road of life, a turn from doing it our own way to doing it His way. But in the meantime, we all struggle with besetting sins, and as we struggle with those sins, we ask the Lord to forgive us. This is one of the great errors being preached today within the body of Christ, that you never have to ask forgiveness again if you've once asked for forgiveness in the past. But as we sin, we ask the Lord to forgive us, to cleanse us from all unrighteousness, and we do it within the context of the ground and pillar of the truth, because we cannot go this road alone. We need others to walk alongside of us so that when we fall, there's someone to pick us up. Christianity is not a Lone Ranger sport. It is a communion. It is a fellowship of believers. And that fellowship is necessary in that we don't all have the same gifts. We have different gifts according to the grace given us. And we have to use our gift, the gift that God has given us, within the context of the body of Christ. So again, Desiree, if you backslide and you're struggling, please know that God does forgive you as you ask for forgiveness with a broken and a contrite heart, but also seek for means by which you can overcome the besetting sin and order your life around the divine. We're coming up to a station break. I will get to calls on the other side of the break. 888-ASK-HANK, numerically 888-275-4265. Also, the quote of the day, although I've given you one quote from Rousseau, I've got a different quote of the day coming up right after the break. Don't want to miss that. And do remember, we're not only doing the broadcast, we're doing a podcast, Hank Unplugged. You can find the podcast at equip.org. I have an incredible conversation on tap right now. Clay Jones, it's the newest, and this is fantastic. I love Clay Jones and what he has done with theodicy, with the problem of evil. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. He explains it perhaps better than anyone I've ever heard. And why did God allow my child to die or suffer? Well, he has an answer, and that answer is so deeply satisfying. You can find out about it on the podcast with Clay Jones. Again, it's called Hank Unplugged. Be back in just a few moments with answers to your questions and the quote of the day.
More Christians need to wake up, stand up, and speak up. Once awakened, we need the conviction and spiritual spine to stand against the forces tearing at the moral fabric of a nation already in decline. Once on our feet, we need to speak up and courageously counter the cultural lies and rampant nonsense that are eroding the foundations of our most basic freedoms. That's why this month we're offering the strategic resource, America at the Crossroads, explosive trends shaping America's future and what you can do about it. To receive your copy of the book, America at the Crossroads, as our appreciation for your financial partnership, simply call 888-7000-CRI and make a gift to support CRI's many outreaches, 888-7000-CRI, or visit equip.org. Stay tuned. Hank-Hanegraaff will return right after this. Are you the product of millions of years of unguided, purposeless, natural processes? Or are you created in the image of a loving God? Faced with the overwhelming scorn of evolutionary proselytizers, it can be hard to articulate the truth about God's creative work. And even among faithful Christians, many misconceptions linger. The Creation Answer book by hank-hanegraaff puts answers to the most hotly debated origins questions right at your fingertips, giving you clarity and understanding. Learn to articulate the truth about our origins clearly and compassionately when you request your copy of the Creation Answer book, or listen to Hank's insightful answers with the unabridged audiobook version on CD. Receive your copy of the Creation Answer book or the audiobook on CD from the Christian Research Institute when you call 888-7000-CRI or go online to equip.org. America is at a crossroads. Action is needed, but not just any action. We don't need Christians merely attempting to do their best. We need soberly informed Christians doing what is genuinely strategic. The future doesn't just happen. It is created by people committed to envisioning and facilitating specific outcomes in society. The key is not simply to know what is coming, but to determine how to respond most intelligently and strategically to emerging circumstances. And that's why hank-hanegraaff and the Christian Research Institute are offering George Barna's strategic book, America at the Crossroads, in appreciation for your financial partnership. Simply call 888-7000-CRI and make a gift to support CRI's life-changing outreaches. 888-7000-CRI or visit equip.org. Has God spoken? Are the words of Scripture merely human in origin, or are they in fact the very words of God Himself? 3 years in the making and based on 2 decades of research and reflection, hank-hanegraaff's monumental book, Has God Spoken?, answers what is surely the most important question facing our world. In Has God Spoken? Memorable Proofs of the Bible's Divine Inspiration, Hank counters the contentions of the Bible attackers and clearly shows that belief in the Holy Scriptures is not a guess or wishful thinking. It is the only logical conclusion after an honest examination of overwhelming evidence. Order Has God Spoken from the Christian Research Institute by calling 888-7000-CRI or go online to equip.org. Equip.org. America is at a crossroads. Action is needed. But not just any action. We don't need Christians merely attempting to do their best. We need soberly informed Christians doing what is genuinely strategic. The future doesn't just happen. It is created by people committed to envisioning and facilitating specific outcomes in society. The key is not simply to know what is coming, but to determine how to respond most intelligently and strategically to emerging circumstances. That is true wisdom. And that's why this month, the Christian Research Institute is offering the strategic resource, America at the Crossroads, Explosive Trends Shaping America's Future and What You Can Do About It, as our appreciation for your financial partnership. Simply call 888-7000-CRI and make a gift to support CRI's many outreaches. 888-7000-CRI or visit equip.org. And now, here's hank-hanegraaff.
Thank you, Randy. The quote of the day and then right to your calls. 888-ASK-HANK is the number to dial. The quote of the day from G.K. Chesterton, who said this, very pithy, something that you have to think about a little bit, but it's worth cogitating on. Chesterton is eminently quotable, and he said, the huge modern heresy is to alter the human soul to fit modern social conditions instead of altering modern social conditions to fit the human soul. There's an epigraph in one of the chapters in the book, A Practical Guide to Culture by Stone Street and Kunkel, this book available for those who support the ministry. Very, very important book. We've been promoting it all month. Let's go back to the phone lines, or go to the phone lines. Talk to Dan in Fort Myers, Florida, listening on the web. Hi, Dan.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. It's good to see that you're aware of what's happening here with this Antifa movement, and I'd like to add something to that. If you like, I can share with your listeners. I was in Ukraine back in July, and I got out of the train station, and there in glaring English letters, I seen the word Antifa, and I was like, wow, that's kind of surprising to see. But in the context of how they work and what's going on, I think it's not surprising, because I think they're controlled, and that they are put in place to foment riots and division and anarchy. We know that the BLM, Black Lives Matter movement, gets a lot of funding from, I think it's been acknowledged, so I'll say his name, George Soros, and people of his ilk. There's tangential proof that Antifa is also getting money from big backers. And also, I follow these social media pages for people like Antifa and Unite the Right. So I was watching this from both sides as they were heading into Charlottesville. And in my opinion, people who were, I would call agent provocateurs, were in place leading the Unite the Right, those extreme people, to be more extreme into the situation in Charlotte, so that that whole situation could blow into the massive problem that it was. I don't know where it's all at, Hank, but I do know that there's big money, big forces at work, and it's very scary.
Yeah, well said. And I think if you look at what I was talking about when I quoted Jean-Jacques Rousseau, is where it's headed in Antifa, or Antifa, as some say it's properly pronounced. They're at the ground zero of saying that we should not have secure property rights. That secure property rights are one of the great systemic problems in society. And as I pointed out in my monologue in the first segment of the broadcast today, in fact, they have a slick little slogan: "No Trump, no wall, no USA at all." But that is something that you can extrapolate to the communist idea of having a country that does not have secure property rights. It's kind of an interesting story, too, in that you wonder how communism can work in China, which is a communist country with a robust capitalist engine. How does that work? Well, it works only because of pragmatism. The small Communist Party in a very populous country wants to maintain control, and they have a great thing going on. If you're part of the Communist Party, I mean, you've got a great life. And they maintain control, and they're pragmatists. And so the fact of the matter is, you don't have secure property rights. You can build a hotel there or a house there, but you're building it on land that you don't own. You have a lease for a certain amount of time, and the Communist Party can pull that lease anytime they want. But somehow or other, it still works, again, because of pragmatism. But the idea in communism in general is that there is no such thing as secure property rights. They have to be abolished at all costs. And we have this idea that is being communicated by Marxists and Leninists, and they're popular today. I mean, you think about the kind of press that Takiyah Thompson got. And she is a member of this communist Leninist group, Workers' World Party. I mean, she was hailed as a hero. And yet, what she is seeking to do is the very thing that Antifa is seeking to do. And the idea is that the history of all existing society, as Marx put it, is the history of class struggle. And if you can get rid of the bourgeois, if they can be vanquished, then the proletariat will finally have heaven on earth. Well, what we found out in the 20th century, after 100 or more million people died, is that the proletariat, when they're in charge, can be more ruthless than the bourgeois. And Lenin, coming on the heels of Marx, was not at all constrained by morality. The very thing that you were talking about, Dan, was what he was motivated by, the word revolution. That was his dictum. Revolution after revolution, history moves closer and closer to the utopian paradise of communism. At least so it is thought. Unless you go and you start weeding through the archives of the Communist Party in China. Not the little red book by Mao, but the little black book. And you find the 100 million lives, and now they're thinking that number is quite understated. Whereas I did last year, towards the end of the year, I walked the streets of Cambodia and then went to the killing fields. In fact, I talked to one of the few survivors of the killing fields. And you see at those killing fields the bones, the skulls. They're kept as a memoriam to a failed policy. And yet people have short memories, and as I said at the beginning of the broadcast, fail to recognize that all civilization is essentially fragile. So I appreciate your perspective and your clarification. It's very helpful, I'm sure, to our audience.
Thank you, Hank. Have a blessed day. And I keep you in my prayers.
Thank you. And we, as Christians, I mean, we need to know our history as well. I mean, I think so often we're looking at what's happening within the culture and saying, how in the world is it possible that this could be happening in America? And we're looking at forces in a very surface way. So we see the statues come down, and we think, well, there were racists back then, and maybe this is a good thing. And you have that debate on that level. But there's a darker hue, and there's a deeper systemic issue, and oftentimes that's missed in the conversation, and it can't be missed in the conversation now because we are in trouble. And I'm not just talking about America. I'm talking about Western civilization is in trouble. It's in trouble because we have a liberalism with all of its permutations. And you think about the fact that you can now be dressed down in kindergarten by not using the right pronoun. How in the world is that possible? You can be called out and shamed, and you can be a 5 or 6 or 7-year-old. You didn't use the right pronoun. Someone transitioned from one sex to another, and the narrative is in their favor, and you're using the wrong pronoun. You need to be called to account for that, because no matter what age you are, you have to buy into the narrative. And I mentioned the Holocaust of abortion. I mean, that's just the beginning. Life is now cheap. And we are using all of the methods of a modern culture, euthanasia, abortion, and much, much more, to go into a mode where we're self-aborting as a culture. And then you have the incredible situation where Islam is now considered to be the champion. In other words, there may be some problems with Islam, but as far as the cultural elite in America are concerned today, Islam is a religion of peace and tolerance, but Christianity is not and must be unseated, because it is the obstacle to progress and enlightenment. It is the obstacle. It is what stands in the way of the pro-abortion lobby, of euthanasia, transgenderism, same-sex sexuality. And therefore, it must fall. So as I said in yesterday's broadcast, you have these strange bedfellows. Illiberal liberalism, illicit Islam. And in the midst of this milieu, and we can't do anything about what happened in the last generation or what will happen in the next generation, but we can do something now. In the midst of this milieu, we must make an apologetic for a faith that alone can redeem civilization. Well, obviously, we're never going to have heaven on earth because the fault line of sin runs through the human heart. But we can make a difference while there is yet time. And again, these are reasons that I ask people to stand shoulder to shoulder with us in the battle for life and truth. I do thank those that support the ministry prayerfully and financially. You can give in a safe, secure fashion on the web at equip.org or write me at Box 8500, Charlotte, North Carolina, zip code 28271. And do remember our resource consultant standing by, 888-7000, and the letter CRI. Antifa, I wanted you to know about it on today's broadcast. I also want you to know about the new arguments that are being used by the pro-choice people and how to counter them. You can find all of that in the journal. Subscribe today. See you tomorrow.
Thank you for joining us today. Our mission at the Christian Research Institute is to equip Christians to think and live Christianly. In appreciation for your gift to support the Christian Research Institute's life-changing outreaches, Hank-Hanegraaff would like to send you a copy of America at the Crossroads, Explosive Trends Shaping America's Future and What You Can Do About It by George Barna. Just call 888-7000-CRI. That's 888-7000-CRI. You can also write CRI at Post Office Box 8500, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28271, or simply visit online at equip.org. The Bible Answer Man broadcast is funded solely by listeners like you. We're on the air because life and truth matter. Are you the product of millions of years of unguided, purposeless, natural processes? Or are you created in the image of a loving God? Faced with the overwhelming scorn of evolutionary proselytizers, it can be hard to articulate the truth about God's creative work. And even among faithful Christians, many misconceptions linger. The Creation Answer book by Hank-Hanegraaff puts answers to the most hotly debated origins questions right at your fingertips, giving you clarity and understanding. Learn to articulate the truth about our origins clearly and compassionately when you request your copy of the Creation Answer book, or listen to Hank's insightful answers with the unabridged audiobook version on CD. Receive your copy of the Creation Answer book or the audiobook on CD from the Christian Research Institute when you call 888-7000-CRI or go online to equip.org. America is at a crossroads. Action is needed, but not just any action. We don't need Christians merely attempting to do their best. We need soberly informed Christians doing what is genuinely strategic. The future doesn't just happen. It is created by people committed to envisioning and facilitating specific outcomes in society. The key is not simply to know what is coming, but to determine how to respond most intelligently and strategically to emerging circumstances. And that's why Hank-Hanegraaff and the Christian Research Institute are offering George Barna's strategic book, America at the Crossroads, in appreciation for your financial partnership. Simply call 888-7000-CRI and make a gift to support CRI's life-changing outreaches. 888-7000-CRI or visit equip.org.